Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. Strangle your demons and let's go.
Y'all need Jesus!
And I want something else to get me through this semi-charmed kind of life. Baby, baby, I want something else. I'm not listening when you say goodbye. Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. I am your host, Eric Hellberg. Do I need to tell us we're like Einstein again, man? If you've been listening, you know, but we are like Einstein, passionately curious, no special talents, and we're living a month and a day, but we've got a busy week ahead of us. So where do we begin? We can get mired in the day-to-day minutia, the day-to-day struggles of one ourselves, our greater humanity around us. It is a very fast-paced world. I think that's where the devil wants to keep us, right? How do you ever slow down and just simply be still and know that I am God if you're always moving so fast? So let's go back to when we had a grounded, a spiritual, a Christian president. We know Joe's Catholic. We get it. We already talked about Joe and his Catholicism. And we already talked about the Pope. Pope needs to rein Joe in. Maybe the Joe needs to rein the Pope in. Maybe they all just need to go away together. The Catholic Church would be better. And we damn sure know that the United States of America would be better without Joe. But what did Reagan say? If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. So let's begin with this. Let's begin with, in the book of John, chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. Is that what is happening to America? We have become godless, like the so-called communist that didn't even acknowledge God back in the day. So now we're having to be where we still have some benevolence. We still have a little bit of humanity sparking our hearts, compassion. Those attributes are simply being pruned so they can be better. But we're actually having parts of us that bear no fruit forcefully removed, chopped off. I think so. I think so. And it will happen to you as a family. It will happen to you on a personal level if you do not abide in him. You abide in him, he will abide in you. It goes round and round. All right? We just came off of Memorial Day. We did a tribute to all of our fallen, and rightly so. Actually, it should be done at some point of every day. There should be some cognizance of it. But instead, we have to pay attention to people like, what the hell do we call her? Illa Omar? Oh, yeah. That representative from Somalia who said, we're always going to have a voice for Somalia in America. We don't want a voice for Somalia in America. I've chased your Somali brethren all around the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex where they have proliferated in the trucking industry. That was easy work. No problem. I know that place like the back of my hand. Now, when I needed to go up to Columbus, Ohio, because most people don't know that Columbus, Ohio is a Somali cesspool, how did they get there in the first place? Well, remember that little ditty we did? And I'm not talking about Jack and Diane. I'm talking about Mogadishu, October of 1993. Of course, we suffered some loss, decimated those Somali animals. But, of course, Bill Clinton sent us into that hot zone without any benefit of air cover, without any benefit of armor, without any benefit of anything that was requested previously by General Garrison. So our highly trained operators on the ground, that being Delta and 3rd Ranger Battalion, had to do their work. There was some coordination with some ancillary forces from the U.S. Army, namely the 10th Mountain Division, 4th ID, etc. Pakistani military was there too. But he cut tail and we ran. Of course, you got to see the flagrant images of hurt, beat up bodies of operators dragged through the streets, and that was a signal to Willie to go ahead and get everyone out of there. Instead of bomb the shit out of them. Okay. So where did he put them? A lot of them were brought to Minnesota, Columbus, Ohio. Now let's say we went to the Sudan because we're humanitarians. We allowed the whole Rwandan genocide to occur. Several million peoples butchered, every type of death imaginable. But Africa has remained in strife ever since. There's ongoing civil war now. And let's take Sudan. Let's say we decided to repatriate some Sudanese because we are humanitarians, which we are not because we're not there. They can't make us any money, guys. But let's say we did pick them up, kind of like that airlift out of Afghanistan when we brought 100,000 Afghanis in that 2-week period once the airport in Kabul had been closed down, and we know that the Taliban had it completely encircled. According to legend, who was actually an Afghani by birth, raised there up until 13, but then later joined the U.S. Army, was used in intelligence and obviously in interpreting. He was on the ground. He said of those 100,000 that came back from Afghanistan during that chaotic withdrawal, not one of them was vetted. Wonder if any of those guys were the Taliban. So they came over here unvetted. Okay, so back to the Sudanese. We pick up the Sudanese. Obviously, they're darker complected, a little bit more melanin in their pigmentation. Where would we put those people? Do we have any topography and or weather patterns in the United States that might be conducive to their own home country? What about like peoples? I guess under the U.S. sentiment, we would put them with the Inuit up in Alaska, right? Let them freeze their asses off, put them with people that act totally different than themselves, and then ask them to get along and assimilate. That's kind of like what we did with the Somalis. So that is how a Somali from that country on the coast, very, very hot, comes to be in Columbus, Ohio. Very, very cold, different looking people. I tell you, we have very kind and compassionate leaders in this country. But of course, Omar, we don't care about the Somali voice. And she put out a tweet on Twitter telling all the people on Memorial Day, all of the veterans on Memorial Day, that they are available to apply for housing benefits, educational training. And this was echoed by Cori Bush. Ooh, another representative who is representing the people of America out of Missouri. And, of course, a pastor. Oh, yeah. A black female pastor. And a BLM member. Black Lives Matter member. We know she is of the people, for the people, and by the people. She put out another similar post on Twitter, but both have had to be removed for their scathing, what would we call that, feedback? They're telling veterans that they can apply for new government aid. Now, granted, all veterans deserve that. They shouldn't even have to apply. It should be streamlined and offered to them, depending upon their circumstance. But Omar and Bush, you realize that Memorial Day is for our fallen, people that will never ever have a chance again to derive these benefits? Maybe that's what we need. More true Americans purporting to lead America. You know nothing about our country. You're in our country, but you know nothing about our country. Okay, fast forward. We've got, what do we call that? Super Tuesday down here in the area of Texas, in which I live, a very highly contested runoff election going on. But the drums are beating. And the drums are beating because October is right around the corner. Did you know, and you don't have to believe me, you can believe Candace Owens. She has her own national show. Big, big audience. And I like Candace Owens. I like her an awful lot. She just said that the forensic audit of the Dominion machines, yes, there are two companies that are widely circulated throughout American elections. One is ES&S and the other is Dominion. And of course, Dominion said their systems were impenetrable. But then when they went to court, because they filed a lawsuit after people said that their machines could be corrupted, a half-ass hacker demonstrated right in front of the judge how he could get into that system and alter the tally of the vote counts right there in front of him. Did it in minutes. Okay, guess we disproved that. But anyways, the forensic audit in Michigan, remember Michigan was a highly contested state back in the 2020 election, has now been uncovered. But did you know that the Attorney General in the state of Michigan has now covered the results? They will not be permissible to the public. I wonder why that is. Did you know the same audit took place in Georgia? The media hasn't covered it, though. But we now know in the state of Georgia in the 2020 election that approximately 300,000 more people voted than they have total on their voter rolls. So I guess Fannie decided to throw caution to the wind because she's been sleeping with the dudes in her office. And, I did an episode on black leaders are in trouble. And I said, take a load off, Fannie. Oh, baby. Take a load for free. Yeah, Fannie got in trouble because she was after Trump and, running amok in Fulton County and sleeping with the brothers and all that good stuff. So what happened? She's dishing out the goods. She don't want to be in trouble anymore, does she? 300,000 more votes. And you still think you had a fair election? We know different, don't we? So we need to gear up for this one. So Joe Biden, he's been on the stump. And I'm going to give this president a new name. I think Joe is more akin to bin Laden. And we don't ever see him unless it is a highly orchestrated event. The terrible thing for Joe and Democrats is the more planning they put in to make Joe look well, the less people attend. And I thought that was the reason for the migrants in the first place. By God, Joe, hold some damn rallies on Tuesday. Call it Taco Tuesday and bring them mofos in. At least offer them a coffee and a Danish. Trump goes somewhere, 100,000 people, and we all hate him, right? Joe goes somewhere, he can barely get 12 tables set up. But you know what? Since he's more akin to bin Laden, and we don't see him that often, why don't we just start calling Joe Ben HIDEN? Right? Kind of like Biden and bin Laden. We're just going to call President Ben hiding. But he wasn't hiding because we had a commencement address at West Point, and those are our officers of the future. And we know these guys are about as soft shoot as a damn snake's belly these days. No grit, probably overweight. I'm not sure if they even have the obstacle course there anymore. Maybe the obstacle is you jump over this one trans cadet, hide the high heels of another cadet, salute the mascot, turn around. But I have no damn idea. But Joe was there. And Joe said, we're the only superpower in the world. Really, Joe? And how do you figure that, Joe? And that he is going to continue to oppose tyrants wherever he sees them. Joe, what tyrants have you opposed? And in previous administrations, anytime we went somewhere under the auspices of deposing a tyrant, not just simply opposing them, what is that place like now? Instead, we unleash hell's fury on ourselves, and the place is worse than when we went in. And then we lie to the American people about why we are going, and it doesn't benefit us at all. The only place that it benefits us is in the defense industrial base and everything ancillary that comes with it. Are you starting to see that we are a nation of war, by war, and only for war? I'm wondering when Trump said that NATO was bullshit stuff, we get nothing from them, we spend all the money, we devote all the resources, he wanted us out of NATO. Is that another reason that you boys got rid of him? And you knew he couldn't come back in because you had pre-planned this war in Ukraine for so long to cover your asses. You knew that what you were attempting to do with the American people could not stand. You knew that our economy could not stand. I mean, for example, you won't let a Canadian trucker, despite NAFTA being passed in 1994, come into our country if he is unvaccinated. But how many millions of illegals did you allow into this country? You never checked their vaccine status, Joe. And you locked down our whole damn country during that time, and we know it was a complete damn sham. You were trying to see if we would be a compliant people, you and your other power brokers, and it worked. But we've come out of it. We're never going to let that happen again. I'm not. And I damn sure wasn't going to take that vaccine. I didn't know where that was going. I wasn't putting it in my body, my children's body, or my wife's body. Okay, Joe, I think we're on to you. And since we're talking about elections, and a lot of times migrants are brought over, via cartel mules. We have the cartel on our border with advanced weapon craft. But you're worried about weapon craft in other parts of the world. You're opposing tyrants, right? Here's the real deal, Joe. You're a tyrant. And your Democratic buddies and the people that pull your strings are tyrants. So you care more about the rest of the world than you do your own people, Joe? You sanctimonious piece of crap. So yes, while we're on the subject of mules and jackasses, we know that these migrants, we know that their votes are at work right now. We know that the methodologies are being put in place. And we like the term mule, right? It's been used before. I wonder how many of these guys, unknowing and uneducated, would be willing to carry things to different places and or pick things up at different places. The good old mail-in ballot system. It's still living large. There are still holes in the system. Okay, and remember our episode yesterday? That was on erectile dysfunction. We don't need to belabor that, but we need to end this episode with our blood pumping, don't we, men? And we've done a few episodes. We try to cover everything on this show, but there is so much to cover. And remember when we lamented the fact that Israel had struck the Iranian embassy in Damascus, then, of course, it was a little bit of tit for tat, a little quid pro quo, kind of like Hunter Biden. And that gets me to thinking, too. I'm going to go off the cuff. Why not? We always hear that if a criminal wants a gun, he will get a gun. Well, Hunter had a gun. Oh, yeah, they found that gun, right? Was that one at the White House? And then in probably one of the most secure and heavily monitored facilities in the world, not just America, the White House, they couldn't figure out whose blow was there with Joe. That cocaine, right? I think the fact that our very adept Secret Service could not figure it out gives us our answer. And I'm going to give the MAGA camp a good slogan because we know that we are a bankrupt nation. So we just keep printing money. We have no money. The average person is starving in America. The average person in America is barely getting by, but Joe keeps bringing in new people. He's bringing them in and sending money all over the world while the people in his own country perish. That's a tyrant, right? All right. My new election motto is deport instead of support. It is much cheaper to deport these mothers than to support them. Get rid of them all, Joe. They're going to hang your ass on that issue alone, and you know it. So what are you doing now? You're going to beef up shit in Ukraine, and I bet you're going to try to raise a stir in Taiwan. And I will do an issue of Taiwan. I will do an issue about Taiwan. The American people are being fed another load of bullshit. But if you could have 2 wars going by the time the election comes, maybe everyone will forget all that, right, Joe? Yep. Well, let's move to another theater. I commented on some killings of some Hamas vermin the other day. I'm going to give you another little piece of news that you haven't heard. So after that bombing in Damascus, right, of the Iranian embassy, then Iran launches their counterstrike back into Israel, penetrates some of the most advanced airspace in the world, a little bit of tit for tat. Israel launched another strike back in. I think that was a week and a half to 2 weeks later, and everything was mum's the word. So I guess that brought about peace. But remember the Munich games, 1972, what Mossad did to those guys, those terrorists? Did you know the chief of Iranian intelligence in the Ladakhan region of Iran, he was just taken out in Iran? Who do you think did that? Mossad. Surgical pinpoint strikes. Right now, the Mossad has so deeply penetrated, and you haven't heard this on the news, right? That an intelligence chief of a province in Iran was murdered? Oh yeah, he was. It actually happened on the afternoon of the 21st, so approximately a week ago. That's great news, actually. I believe right now, the Mossad, and remember when we were talking about Raisi's helicopter, we're like, we don't have the human on the ground to do that. CIA wasn't involved. The only way we could have potentially been involved is with our sanctions on Iran, but we lifted those and sent them back billions of bucks. Remember Barry did that? He's friends with those guys. He sent them back billions so they could get revved up again, probably support Hamas, Hezbollah, all these good guys. But when you have sanctions, you typically place them on a lot of military applications and the service side of the industry, whereby those contractors and or those companies, the manufacturing company, can go and do maintenance and or you can get parts. We know that was I believe that was a Bell 212 helicopter that President Raisi was in. So, hell, if they couldn't get regular service intervals, maybe it just went down on its own accord. Aging aircraft went out of production in 1998. But anyways, the Mossad has so deeply penetrated the circles of power within Iran. I'm hearing that these guys are running like rats, scared, wondering which one of us is going to be offed next. Well, kudos to Israel. Kudos to the IDF. Kudos to the sentimentality. Kudos to the patriotism. Kudos to a God-fearing military. Keep doing what you're doing. So until next time on the Comfortable in Chaos podcast, I bid you bon voyage, my burgeoning flock.